to be talking about a case that has stuck with me since the ninth grade. It is what got me into true crime. I vividly remember sitting in a chemistry class in the ninth grade with my best friend. We sat under the lab tables because we were done with our work and we were watching YouTube videos about famous serial killers and like the craziest stories. We saw stories about Jeffrey Dahmer, Ted Bundy, but one person in particular stuck out to me because the case was so gruesome and disgusting that I went home and researched it for hours, and I was traumatized by this case. And that is the case of the man nicknamed the Gray Man, or the Werewolf of Wysteria. His name is Albert Fish, and he was a serial killer back in the 1900s, and his case was extremely disgusting, and that is honestly what propelled me into wanting to get a criminal justice degree and get into the field of criminal justice. People like that. So I ended up getting my bachelor's degree in criminal justice, and it was honestly due to this man and this case. So I figured it would be a really good first case to talk about on this channel. I named this channel Cup of Joe Crimes because I wanted to name it something like Coffee and Crime or something like that, but I think people have done that already. So I was like, okay, Cup of Joe Crimes. And then I got all my coffee stuff in the back, which I will be drinking one soon. I wanted to do kind of like a coffee and crime type thing, but it is currently 12 o'clock at night. It's midnight, so I was like, okay, maybe coffee isn't the best choice because I don't have decaf, so we can't do espresso, can't do coffee. So I'm just going to be raw footage here talking about this case. Albert Fish was born as Hamilton Howard Albert Fish. Albert was actually his nickname. He was born in 1870, March 19th, in Washington, D.C. His father was actually 75 years old, and his mother was 43 years younger than his father, so that would make her about 32 years old at the time. He had 3 other siblings. They were Walter, Annie, and Edward Fish. And when Albert was very young, his father died, and so his mother assumed care of all of the kids. However, she could not care for them, so she sent them off, him and his 3 siblings, off to St. John's Orphanage. It was here that he gained the nickname Ham and Eggs for some reason, and so he hated this nickname, making him change his name to Albert, which is actually the name of one of his dead siblings. He did this in an attempt to escape that Ham and Eggs nickname. So he changes his name to Albert. It was here at St. John's Orphanage that he began receiving regular beatings and whippings, and it's actually said that these beatings and whippings were causing him physical pleasure, if you know what I'm saying, so little pleasure. And other orphans thought this was extremely weird, and so they started making fun of him for it, and Albert later on goes to say that this is what causes his sadism, masochism in the future, were these beatings that he received at the orphanage. So at the age of 10, Albert's mother began a government job, so she was reunited with her children and they began living with her again. By the age of 12, Albert began a relationship with a telegraph boy who was local. Albert and him began this relationship, and it was super strange off the bat because the telegraph boy actually introduced Albert into the act of drinking his own urine and eating his own feces, which I'm not trying to kink shame anyone at all. If you're into that, you're into that. But at the age of 12, it seemed a little mature for Albert to be getting into this. It's said that Albert also frequently visited public baths, and he would watch the young men undress, and it gave him physical arousal. Then by 1980, he moved to New York, so he was about 20 years old at the time. Moves to New York, he becomes a sex worker, and at the same time, he's also molesting a lot of younger boys, or so it says. So while he's doing the sex work, he's also sexually assaulting young children. This molestation continued even after Albert's mom arranged a marriage for Albert. So she saw him single and not happy looking, so she arranges this marriage with a woman named Anna Mary Hoffman in 1898. Albert and Anna end up having 6 children together, and I know what you're thinking, it's like, oh wow, so Albert was sexually assaulting children at the time. Did he sexually assault any of his 6 children? But actually, it's not said that he did. It's only said that he caused them discomfort through various acts, but these weren't directed towards the children per se. And I'll get more into that in a second. So in 1917, Anna actually leaves Albert to be with another man. And this caused a whole load of problems. She came back once in between the leaving him for another man, and she needed a place to stay. And so Albert let her stay in the house with him. However, the new man that she was seeing wanted to stay as well, and Albert was not having it. Rightfully so. And she actually snuck in the man that she was seeing and hid him in the house until Albert found out, and he kicked both of them out. He's like, you can stay, he can't. And so she just decides to leave for good. Now, during the time that Albert had his children to himself, so without the care of Anna as well, he asked them to do a few things that were extremely sketchy, looking back on it now. He asked them to spank him with a nail-studded paddle. So there's this giant paddle, right? Giant paddle. Bunch of nails sticking out of it. He would have the children and even their friends, when they would come over, grab the paddle and start hitting him with it until he bled. The children reported that he would ask them to hit him until blood ran down his legs. And he was into that. He was into pain and physical torture. What Albert also did is he was said to have stuck needles, so sewing needles, into his lower region, his pelvic region, until he could not see them anymore. So he would stick them extremely far, deep into his skin, to the point where he couldn't bring them back out. There's actually a picture of these needles. It's an x-ray that had been done on Albert, I believe at the time of his death or right before his death, but it shows all of the needles that had been stuck into him, and there are a few. I'll insert the picture. So Albert continued these kind of pain, sadomasochist type relationships with people. He would go to brothels frequently and ask them to beat him and whip him and such, and it would give him sexual pleasure, sexual gratification. So soon this wasn't enough and he needed more. So in 1910, Albert actually committed his first known mutilation. Albert met this young man, very young, he was only 19 at the time, named Thomas Keaton. Thomas Keaton had a few mental and intellectual disabilities, so he wasn't able to really think for himself, and so he was very agreeable to whatever Albert asked him to do. So Thomas Keaton agrees to let Albert have his way with him and do whatever fantasies that he wanted to live out. So Albert brings Thomas Keaton to a farmhouse, I believe it was Albert's farmhouse, and he tortures him for about 2 weeks straight. So first the torturing is kind of normal, it's not as bad, and then finally, towards the end of Thomas Keaton being at this farmhouse, Albert decided that he wanted to kill Thomas Keaton. Fortunately enough, this didn't happen. He didn't end up killing Thomas. However, he did mutilate his genitals. It said that he cut off about half of his lower area. He cut it off, doused it in hydrogen peroxide, and then covered it in Vaseline and a rag. And he planned on killing Thomas, but he said the weather was too hot and he didn't want Thomas's meat to spoil, which brings in the acts of cannibalism that began as well. Albert was known for cannibalism, mutilation, pretty much everything. Thomas Keaton runs off. Albert gives him $10 and a kiss on the forehead and lets him go. Now, Albert wasn't satisfied by this, and he wanted his first kill. Now, it's claimed that Albert killed numerous children between the years of 1919 and 1924. However, these claims aren't very reputable, but he does say that he killed a lot of children between this time. He supposedly targeted children with intellectual disabilities and African American children because the police would be less likely to investigate these cases, which is absolutely terrible, and it just goes to show that that's how society was at the time, and honestly still can be called that today. Not as severe, but... Oh, another thing is, Albert frequently made dishes involving raw meat, completely raw meat, beef, pork, whatever, and he would try to feed it to his kids. He would invite them to eat this raw meat with him, but that's said to have kind of quenched or quelled his fantasies of cannibalism for the time being, but they weren't completely satisfied. Now, it's said that after Albert's wife left, he began hearing voices. He would hear a voice from God that told him that he needed to kill children. And not just kill them, but torture and then murder them. Now, he visited various professionals at the time to try to get himself evaluated, and they all claimed that he was sane. They didn't find anything wrong with him, so he was let to live out in society. Now, July of 1924 is when Albert saw a young girl, Beatrice Keel, playing on her farm. He called out to the girl and attempted to bribe her so that he could kidnap her and probably carry out a disgusting fantasy of his. However, Beatrice's mother saw him. She saw Albert and she chased him away. But then later that night, Albert snuck into the farm, the barn area. Thankfully, in time, Beatrice's father saw Albert and he chased him away. So that was it for the Beatrice family. Her parents honestly saved her because Albert's known to do awful things to children. So thank goodness for the mother and the father. So at the time, Albert failed to secure his kill, but this wouldn't be the case for the next victim. So in 1928, Albert saw an ad in the newspaper put out by a man named Edward Budd. Now, Edward Budd put this ad out because his family was struggling financially and he wanted a part-time job to help them out. After seeing this ad, Albert figured that this man would be his perfect target, and he would be the person that he would kill and eat. So Albert responds to this 18-year-old Edward Budd, and he drives over to the Budd's family residence. Here at the residence, he claims that he is going to pay Edward $15 a week for help around the house, and the family is ecstatic about this because that's the money that they needed to help take care of their home. Albert planned on murdering Edward Budd, letting him bleed out, and then consuming his body. After the initial meeting of the Budd family, Albert planned on coming back and picking up Edward and carrying out his sick fantasy. However, something changed when he saw a younger girl, Grace Budd, who was Edward Budd's little sister. Grace was a super young and bright girl, and sadly, Albert switched his target from Edward to Grace after seeing her. Now, Albert needed a plan to get this girl to himself, so what he did is he convinced the Budd family that he would be attending a niece's birthday party that night. And so he asked, hey, would you like me to bring along Grace so she can meet some people her age, have fun, go to a birthday party? The family trusted Albert because he looked to be like a sweet old grandpa to them. He didn't seem untrustworthy at all, and so they let him take Grace. I know nowadays it's like a giant red flag, like, okay, why would you let a stranger, complete stranger at that, take your daughter to a random birthday party if you don't even know if it's a real birthday party, and you don't know this guy at all? Why would you let that happen? Back in the day, back in the early 1900s, that wasn't really a problem. People were genuinely trustworthy of one another. They trusted everyone in town, didn't really lock doors. It was kind of like a big community, and they didn't have any thoughts that this crazy thing that would happen to Grace would happen. Sadly, after that night, the Budd family never saw Grace again. Albert took her to an abandoned house and murdered her, and then ate her. After Grace didn't return to the home, the family filed her as missing, and there began an investigation by police. Police actually thought that another man had killed Grace or taken her, kidnapped her, and they falsely imprisoned him for, I want to say, about 108 days until it was revealed that he was innocent, and it was Albert that did this. So Albert was on the run for about 6 years. No one could catch him. It was like he had completely vanished off the face of the earth until there was a letter that was sent to the Budd family. It was addressed to the Budd's mother, so the mother of the Budd family, and it was written by Albert. Now, this letter was extremely disgusting. Honestly, it was probably one of the most crazy things that I had read at the time. I was in 9th grade, so reading this, I was like, oh my goodness, I was kind of traumatized for a while. So I would not suggest reading this letter, but if you let your curiosity get the best of you, then I pray for your emotional healing, because it is really messed up and disturbing. I won't show the letter or read it word for word, but basically what was in the letter was a confession from Albert saying what he did to Grace. It is said that he chopped her up into multiple pieces and consumed parts of her body for about 9 days. He talks specifically about the parts of her body that he enjoyed eating and how they tasted. But he makes sure to include at the end of the letter that he did not sexually assault Grace. I don't know if this was trying to be some sort of consolation to the Bud's mother. I'm not sure why he included this. I don't know if he's trying to put her at ease, like, hey, at least I didn't do that to her. It's all messed up. I don't know why he would do that in the first place. It's pretty sick to want to send that to a victim's mother. It's awful. Regardless, the mother of the Buds, she read this letter and she was sickened. She couldn't even finish it because of how disgusting it was. So eventually, the police got a hold of this letter and they were trying to examine it. Maybe to find clues about where Albert was or if it was even Albert in the first place. So they find a piece of stationery or part of the stationery that's addressed to a certain place. They go to this place, and there they find Albert. Between the years of 1926 and 1932, he's said to have committed various other murders, which he wasn't quite tried for. So I'm not too sure if he really did commit these murders or not. However, he was finally arrested for the murder of Grace in 1934, and in 1935 he was put on trial. Prosecutors and victims, members of the community, wanted him put to death. They wanted him to receive the death penalty. So Albert claimed that he was insane. He claimed that he was innocent by reason of insanity, and various mental health professionals came to test Albert and see if he really was insane, and they didn't find anything. They found that he was sane. Although he was hearing voices, they found him sane. And so he was put to death via electric chair in 1935. So Albert sat on death row for about 10 months at Sing Sing Correctional Facility. There are several rumors about his death and his electrocution. It's said that he enjoyed it. It was like one of the things he had never tried. As we know, he was into pain and sadism and masochism. So he claimed that it was one of the best pleasures he's ever felt, which has been proven as being false now. There was also claims that the pins that he had stuck in his lower pelvic region had actually made the process not go as smoothly, which was also refuted. But that's just food for thought. So before Albert died, he actually sent a letter to his lawyer, and the letter supposedly was so vile and disgusting that the lawyer said it should never be read by anybody. And so those contents of the letter, they haven't been known to this day. Something interesting about this case, this is like kind of the part that fascinated me and made me want to delve deeper into the realm of this, is he mentions in his letter that he wrote to the Budd family mother that he went to China back in the 1800s, late 1800s, and China was experiencing a famine at the time. So he claims that him and a few friends that had gone to China were given the meat of children to eat and consume. Basically, parents were selling their children because of the famine to get money, and people would eat these children because they were hungry. He claims that this is where he developed the taste for child meat, and it's pretty messed up, but it is super interesting. I don't know if that's factually accurate. I don't think that it's true. I think he maybe just made that up. But if you do look into famines in history, there are known acts of cannibalism that come from those famines, which is very interesting to me. And I don't think Albert's telling the truth, but it kind of makes you wonder, hey, is that really where he got this cannibalism motif from? Not too sure. Regardless, the story was extremely gruesome and graphic, so take care of yourself and your mental health, and if you see anybody that's struggling mentally, please do offer them assistance. The more and more cases that I read, the more I realize that mental health usually plays a pretty big role in these cases. For example, there was a case about a man named Austin that was a frat boy, and he ended up eating the face of one of his neighbors. It was like a very hugely debated case, but it is assumed that it was due to psychosis. And there are also a few other cases that honestly have a lot to do with mental health. So please, if you have any family or friends that are experiencing mental illness or mental health concerns to that extent, please do try to help them get help. In a lot of these cases, if they would have just received some help for their mental illness, things could have gone a lot differently. Regardless, thank you so much for watching this video. I appreciate you taking the time to watch it. Take care of yourself, take care of your mental health, and take care of others. If you have any other cases that you'd like me to cover, if you like the way that I covered this one, let me know, and I will 1000% get to those cases. I have a few others that I want to talk about in the future, but I thought I would start off with this one. As always, I definitely want to leave my condolences to the victims or anyone affected by Albert and his disgusting acts. Not just those who were potentially murdered by him, but those that were the families of those who were victimized by Albert. Thank you so much. If you did enjoy and you do want to subscribe, definitely do so. I would appreciate it so much, only if you want to. Also, if you want to leave a like, go for it. If you don't, that's okay too. I appreciate you just watching this video.